We've heard for 10 years people have been complaining about the issues in the port. And I know that you guys are working at it non-stop, but you're dealing with government. It's not like dealing with the business.
You know, the port needs to know what's coming,
Yes.
plan for that. But the growers also need to know, okay, you can't send now.
Yeah.
This is what's the situation there. So we
Or
really
at least make a plan earlier.
or at least make a plan earlier, which is difficult. I mean, some guys are just not. The Port of Cape Town is such an important exit point.
Because South Africa is the biggest exporter of fresh fruit in the Southern Hemisphere. So it must really ensure that it maintains that position.
You know, it could be just by improving your planning capacity. How they allocate time slots at the gates. You know, there's such a lot of small incremental changes that you can just make here and there in the system, which can then potentially lead to a 5 or 10% improvement. Hope is not a strategy.
No. No.
So
Good luck with that.
And neither is
because
luck.
it's- Yeah.
I think the big value for the FPF is its relationships, because that is the core of this industry. It's a people industry.
I think they're still looking at those boxes.
Yeah.
That they said not anymore.
We should clarify that during the times where South African fruit was boycotted in Europe because of the apartheid regime, a lot of the stuff was exported and it was labelled export of Swaziland, which is now Eswatini.
Yeah, those and shortlisted.
I'm curious to see that list of 48. That could be quite interesting to see.
Yes.
You know, some of them you could see the application of the CVs was AI.
Today's episode is brought to you by Agrarius, a South African investor specializing in agriculture. Agrarius founders originate from the farming community and have experienced how financial markets don't understand agricultural sector needs. They have thus fundraised from JSE investors to make money work for everyone. Agrarius offers a wide range of solutions, be it working capital, new equipment, new plantings and farm purchases. Whenever there is business potential, there is a way to make it happen. Agrarius, fair funding for agriculture. For more information about funding options, visit agrarius.co.za, a product of 274 Investment Managers. An authorized financial services provider, 31045.
Good morning, gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us. There's been a changing of the guard at the Fresh Produce Exporters Forum, and we've got Anton Kruger here with us today, who was until recently the CEO of the Fresh Produce Exporters Forum. And we're also joined by Piet de Jager, who is the new CEO of the Fresh Produce Exporters Forum. So welcome. It's nice to have you both here.
Thank you, Louise. It's
Yeah.
a privilege to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks. It's lovely
Louise.
to have you here. I think I'm just going to start with you, considering that you can probably tell us more because you've been in the job for 14 years, as you said. I think, tell us a little bit about who and what is the Exporters Forum? How does it work? What do they do for exporters in our country? I think it'll be good to start there.
Yeah, thank you, Louise. It's the Fresh Produce Exporters Forum, but it's known as the FPEF or FPEF in the industry. And just a bit of history. It originated when you had deregulation of the agricultural industry, because there were no export agents before that time. So when deregulation came about, then suddenly you had a lot of export agents popping up everywhere. And not everybody was credible, and I think was really doing what they're supposed to do in an ethical way. So that's why the FPF was established, to bring discipline into the industry. That was still part of the ethos when I left as well, to say that the primary role of the FPEF was to ensure a sustainable, profitable, yet disciplined fresh produce export industry. So the big difference between the FPEF and the producer organizations is that the FPEF is a voluntary membership-based association. So it's got no statutory levies. The income is from membership fees and from the volumes exported. So if the FPEF does not deliver the service to the exporters and other entities involved in the value chain, then they would just resign. Or they leave, you lose that income, and you're not delivering the service. So speaking about the membership, so it is export agents, it is producer exporters, the bigger producers who've got their own brands also exporting, and then other entities, businesses involved in the value chain, such as packaging companies, freight forwarding agents, other logistics service providers, even shipping lines, members of the FPEF. And I think the big value for the FPEF is its relationships, because that is the core of this industry. It's a people industry. So the relationships amongst the exporters and the producers, the exporters amongst themselves, and then the relationships with the regulatory authorities. I think that is one of the core functions of the FPEF. That would include the Department of Agriculture on the national level and on a provincial level where necessary, with our embassies abroad, with embassies of other countries within South Africa, and then I think where Piet can expand later on with Transnet and the ports. Because South Africa is the biggest exporter of fresh fruit in the Southern Hemisphere. So it must really ensure that it maintains that position, and that can only happen through access to new markets and a proper functioning port system. So having mentioned the access to new markets, that is also one of the core roles of the FPEF. We've seen in Europe that consumption is declining of fresh fruit especially. A couple of years ago, realized that we should focus on new markets. Did a bit of a study and saw that is the East, the Far East especially, Southeast Asia, because that's where you've got the growing populations. You've got the growing middle class, people who do have the money to spend, and it's part of their diet primarily. But South Africa did not have access to most of those markets. A country like the Philippines, there was no access for any fruit. Thailand, the same. And we realized then that we must try and get a strategy together. So part of that was to formalize Fruit South Africa. It was a bit of a loose organization previously between the CEOs of FPEF and the grower associations. So then we formalized that within a separate non-profit company based in Pretoria. And primarily, most of the interactions with government happen in Pretoria. Meetings on short notice, whatever, so that is important to have that office there and to have one voice for the industry. That is crucial, because what happened in the past is that someone from the FPEF and two grower associations maybe come with the same issue, go and knock on the door of the same official in Pretoria. And that official then gets irritated with the industry. And so that is one of the reasons we said, let's have one voice one place where we can come together and address these things. And market access, one of those. So we initiated trips overseas. When I joined the FPEF, I came from another industry, so I could ask the stupid questions. An example is, my first question was, why can't we export apples to China? So the answer is, we don't have access. I said, yes, but why? I couldn't get the correct answer, or maybe a full answer. So I got into a plane to Beijing. I realized that as an industry, we're not allowed to negotiate with other governments. It must be a government-to-government negotiation. Then we took someone from the embassy along, had the meetings with the decision makers in Beijing, and then they said, well, they must send an inspection team to South Africa to verify our systems, how we manage plant diseases, how we mitigate risk. So my question was, okay, why don't you do it? They said 2 reasons. Firstly, they must have an official invitation from the South African government. And secondly, they don't have the money to send 4 inspectors. I said, okay, we'll pay as an industry, we'll arrange the invitation. Long story short, 4 months later, the inspection team, the members were here, and 2 months later, the protocol was signed. So after 15 years,
Incredible.
we gained access. So that was an example, and we continue with that. And then later on, eventually, we've managed to get senior officials from the Department of Agriculture to be part of these delegations. In actual fact, they lead the delegation when we engage with those governments. But simultaneously on those visits, we also engage with industry partners in those countries. Associations, importers, visited wholesale markets, experienced the dynamics, saw the dynamics. And there were quite a number of successes recently. I think a lot of momentum.
Yes.
So when Donald Trump announced his 30% tariff increase, it didn't affect the industry, the entire industry from South Africa as such. We only export 5% of the fresh fruit to the USA. It's primarily citrus, and only from the Western Cape. And so we used to some high tariffs, ironically, within the BRICS membership. So in India, we pay up to 53% import duties on apples, and the others around, I think, 25%, the lowest. In India, on average, 15%, up to one case of about 40%. So Russia, luckily, there we don't have tariffs. If we do have, it's about 4%. So that is one of the other big challenges. So we gain access to a market on the phytosanitary level, everything, but then we're faced with these high import duties and tariffs. And the mandate to negotiate that is with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, not with the Department of Agriculture. So that is another government department with which we liaise very closely. The FPEF is the official Fresh Produce Export Council. So within the DTIC, they do have about 28 export councils for various industries, automotive, leather and footwear, meat, jewelry, all of that. So the fresh produce industry is one of those. Being in that position, it also requires us to be responsible for the international trade shows, for the South African pavilions. So to raise the money or get the DTIC to pay for it, unfortunately, it did not happen every year. So we had to go back to industry and say, listen, we need 4 million or 5 million for the stand, for the pavilion, because we could not afford not to be there, because South Africa is the biggest exporter in the Southern Hemisphere. All the competitor countries are there. So that's also was a challenge. I think it's an ongoing challenge, the fiscal constraints, and we realize we're not the only export council, as we say, and we can see now with, again, the Trump thing and the impact on the automotive industry, we realize that when we do get funding, we should be thankful for it. But having said that, when I started 14 years ago, we attended 2 trade shows per annum. It was in Berlin, the biggest one, Fruit Attraction, just happened now.
Fruit Logistica.
Fruit Logistica. So let me rephrase if you want to edit. 14 years ago when I started, we participated in 2 international trade shows, the biggest Fruit Logistica in Berlin, that happened just now again in February, the first time in 14 years that I've not been there.
Wow.
And then Asia Fruit Logistica in Hong Kong. And now we're at about 10
Sure.
of these international trade shows linked to market access. So that's, I think, a good story. But that's also together with the other associations. It's not only the FPEF, but the FPEF is the lead association because of the exports. So those are the 2 primary government departments, the DTIC, Department of Agriculture, but the third one is DIRCO, International Relations and Cooperation, because of the embassies. There's supposed to be agricultural attachés in most of these countries that are the target countries for growth. But unfortunately, again, not everywhere. So what we see, the staff from DIRCO, sometimes even up to second in charge, or sometimes the ambassador him or herself gets involved to assist this wonderful industry. And looking at that, the things I've said now, market access, maybe the lack of funding for shows, not enough staff, people in embassies, that confirms another important characteristic of this industry, and that is solution driven and positive. My experience was that when there is a problem, people in this industry don't run away from it. They run towards it and say, okay, we're here. How do we solve this? And then get solutions. And that is wonderful to have been involved in such an industry. We say, yeah, there were some bumps, but achievements, and I think that is also with everybody working together and ensuring that we can see the growth of this industry. And we need to have more markets. The forecasts are a 35% increase in production if we look at fruit coming in the next couple of years. So those fruit need to find a home, new markets.
Definitely.
And so that is important as well.
Wow. That was like a soliloquy. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And on that note of so much new fruit coming, Piet, sounds like you've got your...
Well, I've got...
Yes.
Anton, would you maybe introduce Piet
Yes, please.
to us and to whoever is viewing?
Yes, I think that
from your side.
it would be very good.
Yes, I think Piet, it was... I think Piet came into the deep end when he joined the FPEF in mid-September in 2025. So when I turned 65, the board offered me a 3.5-year extension with part of the agreement that in the last year we'll start recruiting someone as a successor. So we started with that process early in 2025. So Piet was one of, I think, about 48 candidates who applied, shortlisted, and interviews, and shortlisted, and shortlisted.
I'm curious to see that list of 48. That could be quite interesting to see.
Yes.
You know, some of them you could see the application of the CVs was AI and wasn't
Oh, really?
written afterwards. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And again, because I see paper, can put anything on paper, but when you ask the third question, you say, okay, that doesn't work. But in Piet's case...
My dad's got a nice saying, and I'm going to say it in Afrikaans. Papier is gewillig om te dra.
Yeah, correct.
Paper is willing to carry.
Yes. So, but in Piet's instance, when on the CV it was Pieter de Jager.
Oh.
So we walked into the interview, we said, morning Pieter. He said, no, Piet. We said, okay, great. So Piet was the only candidate from up north. He's from Gauteng, who on his own cost came down to Paul for the interview. So that already said a lot about the person. So in the interview, Piet is a trained CA. So initially I thought, okay, CA, let's see what will happen. But he does have a background in the agricultural industry. He can expand on that. And we were very glad that Piet accepted the offer, although that involved moving down to the Cape. And as I've said, so he started mid-September. The first week of October, we went to Madrid. To Madrid for fruit attraction there. So Piet was thrown into the deep end, and immediately the port, the issues there, to be involved with that. Other overseas trips to China, that Piet, I think Piet 2 or 3, that he accompanied us 3, and I think the last one, it was a week long, and a trade show there, and then it was only Piet and I from the FPEF, and that was a good opportunity for us to get to know each other better. And so why I mention that is when my season came to an end at the FPEF, I was 100% comfortable that Piet is the correct person. He is the right guy to take the FPEF forward. So I had peace in my mind about that. Peace, that's the end of the season. I can go with a good feeling.
And it was still within his 3-month probation. Remember?
Yes.
Yeah. So if he came back from China, it wasn't fun.
Piet, everyone's talking about you.
I still have a month of probation
Everyone's
left, so I must watch
talking
what I'm
about
saying.
you. So now let's talk to you, not just about you.
Yeah, no.
Welcome, Piet. It's
Thank
lovely
you.
to have you here, and what an introduction. Tell us a little bit about your background before you joined FPEF, and what was your motivation to join FPEF?
Yeah, well, as Anton mentioned, I'm a CEO by qualification, but I never actually practiced as a CA in the traditional sense. So when I completed my articles, I got married, and my father-in-law was a very prominent pineapple farmer in KZN. Offered us the opportunity to join him on the farm, and we probably a bit naive. But then we joined them farming queen pineapples and cattle, and we actually built a game lodge on our one property, which we then ran for a number of years. So that's where I got exposed to the fruit industry. Pineapples is a very niche market in South Africa, but we also exported quite a lot at that stage to the Middle East, Europe, and even America. And small pineapples, like we call them baby pines. So it's all by air freight. So our variety there can't handle a container at sea. It just doesn't have the legs. So it's all air freight, and a lot of it went into the decorative market. So it ended up in like fruit baskets and things like that. So it was, you get your large pineapples for eating, and then these ones were the small ones. So it's basically our second or third grade pineapples. Okay. Even at one stage, you'd cut them on the stem, and they're as big as golf balls, and we sent them to the flower market.
Interesting.
To sell as flower decorations. So we did a number of things there. It was a very good experience for me, as basically fell in love with the not just the sector, but fruit specifically. And then we were part of a group of farms that the government were buying out for land redistribution, and my father-in-law at that stage was ill, so we thought it's a good exit for him. And we then moved back to Johannesburg, Pretoria, where I then joined Deloitte Consulting for a bit. So I was part of the team that ran projects all over the continent. So and that really exposed me to, coming from a small industry in a small town to the rest of the world.
I can well imagine.
What is actually happening, although a lot of it mostly on the continent. So did a lot of traveling all over, looking more on the financial side of a lot of the projects, so feasibility studies, due diligences, that type of thing.
With a lot of agriculture in this project as well.
It was mainly agriculture.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Okay.
mainly agriculture, but also other commodities. Although I come from fruit, it was anything from forestry to grains to livestock to fish. I mean, I spent a week in Mozambique on a fish farm, and at one stage I joined the marine biologist to go and swim with the fish in those nets, where you actually then they look at the movement of the school of fish, if they're happy or not. So I was just sitting there hanging on.
Do you like fishing?
I do like fishing.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's-
I'm a very good crew member. I never had my own boat, so very good crew member. So so that gave me a lot of exposure. One into methodologies and so on of an international consulting firm like Deloitte, and then also exposure into the continent. And I could really use the practical experience that I had on the farm and combine that with the financial side. And we were jet setting all over the continent, lots of interesting places and things. And then out of that, we created our own consulting business, which I was still part of, but now basically as a silent partner. And I was involved in a couple of startups in between. So from agrochemicals, more on the organic side, and also a little bit technology. And I worked for another consulting business that was part of Agri SA. So yeah, what attracted me, I actually never. FPEF has a bit of a low profile in terms of
Indeed.
exposure in the media and so on. So even though I was in the fruit business and I exported, I never really knew they existed until I saw the opportunity. You always knew there was someone. You didn't know what they were about. So one of my own motivations was actually for the interviews just to find out more what they're doing and how what's happening there. So I think I came with more questions than what they asked me. So at one stage in the interview, I remember I asked a couple of questions. I just sat back and they had a big discussion.
Oh wow!
So I actually learned quite a lot. And I always say it's like, that's the dog chasing the bus. Now I caught the bus. Now what do we do? I must get on that bus. So it was for me it was because I've been involved in primary agriculture quite a bit and organized agriculture.
Yeah.
Both with my stint at at a division of Agri SA, really got exposed to that part. I was also, for my sins, I was chairman of our own pineapple association and the farmers association, quite involved in organized agriculture when I was still farming.
Okay.
So this is a nice transition for me in the value chain. So we're still adjacent to and very much dependent on the primary side, but it's nice to actually now be more on the marketing side and the logistics. And as Anton explained, I mean, all this, if you're not in it, you actually don't know what is involved in opening up a new market.
Yeah.
And it's not just phytosanitary, and now you have access. Can you actually exploit that market on a commercial basis? That's the next step. And then where we're battling now, for instance, okay, now we have that, we have access, we have everything. We don't have the best trade agreements, but I see that's changing. There's some movement now. But can we actually get our fruit there in a fair state? And that's where a lot of my grey is coming from this last couple of weeks, months, with issues we've had in the port. It's been challenging, and you have very so our position is quite neutral in terms of where we are, but we also have some of our own members and commodity organisation members who are losing bucket loads of money millions of rands are at risk, and that's already been lost to inefficiencies, to delays, to weather-related matters, and it all impacts us. So it's Anton said. I mean, one of our things we must keep. We're a membership organisation that's voluntary. So we can only stand on the service that we provide our farmers, and our farmers, our members, and keep them happy. You know, if they're not happy, they'll resign, or they don't see value in what we do. So that's the challenge: is to keep on making sure that we provide that value. It should never. I tell the staff now. I mean, we should never be in a position where a member doubts the value that we bring to him or the service that we provide. It must be very clear and very tangible what those services are and the benefits that they get from membership of the FPEF.
And membership of FPEF is actually quite a badge of honor. International. Anybody that is wanting to import stuff, if they are dealing with somebody who's an FPEF member, I mean, they've been vetted, they've been approved, they are, and they are voluntarily paying to be a member. And we're on LinkedIn quite a lot, and you sometimes get this random request. We want fruit, whatever. Our first port of call is we refer them to FPEF, because that's the starting point. What percentage of it's probably a difficult question to answer, but what percentage of companies exporting from South Africa are members of FPEF? It's a difficult, but could you hazard a guess?
So I can hazard quite an educated guess, because our members declare their export volumes on an annual basis.
Okay.
So we've got an idea as to what they're exporting compared to the exports, the total exports from South Africa. So we have 133 exporter members, and they roughly represent about 90% of the fresh produce export from South Africa. So we've got a very good representation from an industry basis. And as you said, I mean, it's a badge of honor. So you don't just become a member. There's a process, there's vetting, you have to be recommended. We have a very strict code of conduct that we apply to our membership. So that gives comfort. And one of the initiatives I'm busy with now is to actually have a badge that you can stick on your website and say member of the FPEF. So like a ribbon.
Excellent.
Or even a box sticker, for instance. But I was going
to. Box stickers are difficult because that won't work. So that's kind of there's marking requirements and marketing and all sorts. But just from to show that you are a member. But we also get quite a lot of inquiries in terms of, is this a legitimate?
I'm sure.
Business. And the opposite. So we also have a reporting system where if members of ours have dealings with suspect companies overseas or locally, we have a reporting mechanism where they can actually report it to us. We'll then investigate if there's valid reason, and then we just put a notification out to our members to say, well, if you consider doing business with this and this company or person there, please just contact us or the referring company who did it. And then we're actually getting, I think that's probably one of our mailers that gets the most responses and gets passed on the most, even though it's confidential, only for members. So, and I've had one of my first ones that I encountered. I think within 15 minutes of me sending it out, I got a phone call from the person implicated in that letter, who's not on our mailing list. He's not a member or anything. To say, but hey, you can't do this. This is not right. This is not. Well, are you in default with this and this customer? Yes. I said, but then sort that out, and then you come back to me. So we actually do. I think we underestimate sometimes the reach that we have and the influence that we have on the industry. And I think that's in Anton's monologue. He mentioned the formalization or the organizing of the industry. because I think there was, and there still might be, some very rogue characters floating around. And our association organisation is it's one of the key points for us is to make sure that you have to be in a good standing to be a member, and there's value in that.
The point is that if you have 90% of the exports going out of the country, if 90% of the exporters are members of your organisation voluntarily and they're paying for it, clearly you're doing something right.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. Because somebody can just say, well, if they are voluntarily paying for it, what stops them from putting them onto the FPEF list? So I think if you can just go into a little bit with what the strict criteria is, just flesh it out a little bit, so that, because often we deal with a lot of people, and like Louise says, we get these questions come in all the time, and because we've got some export clients, we often refer it back to them and so forth, and obviously to FPEF.
So there's a couple of requirements if you want to become a FPEF member. So first of all, you actually need 2 other members to nominate you, or support your application. You have to sign the code of conduct that you'll act according to that, and then we also do a couple of checks. So there's we do a credit check on the company and the directors, and we also do so there's the Agricultural Produce Agents Council, APAC.
Yes.
Where if you are acting as an agent in the agricultural space, so on behalf of a principal, you must be, it's an act that you have to comply with, so you have to be registered with them. So one of the key factors for us is you must be registered there as well. So, and then we do our own checks, and then there's also, it's not just, any application goes before the board, and it needs board approval to be approved. Otherwise, you won't become a member. So there's quite a stringent process and due diligence that we follow, and not to make just anyone can't just become a member. And we're also strict in terms of suspending membership. So if you cross the line, if there's complaints from other members and so on, we act, and we have a disciplinary process that will then be initiated if you suspect a member of actually either bringing us in disrepute or acting poorly against other.
Sorry about that, guys.
No problem.
Rookie mistake.
Rookie mistake. I shouldn't be making those mistakes. Sorry. But that's pretty interesting. And the point is, the fact is that you do have teeth. How often do you have to bear them? Have you ever?
I suspended with the consultation with Anton. We suspended a member end of last year it's actually a civil case that's been dragging on for a number of years, which we thought was handled. So we did that last year, and we've had a couple of applications this year that we just said no, but you can't. So because if you're on our naughty list, want to call it that, then you have to clear your name first.
Get it, yes.
Before you can, because again, we cannot afford to lose the support and the trust of our actual members by allowing someone else to act in that manner, or allow them to become members, because we do get questions asked, and we often get challenged on how could you allow this and this person because he was associated with that person, and then we rely on that due diligence process to make sure that it is there. Plus it serves before the board. So yeah, we try and protect the integrity of the brand.
Of course.
As much as we can.
Well, as you were mentioning, I wasn't really aware that South Africa is the biggest exporter of fresh produce in the Southern Hemisphere, and if that's a badge that our country holds, and then you are really the gatekeepers of the integrity of the exporters.
Is this available in other countries like Australia and Chile, and do they have something similar to this?
Not really.
Not really, no.
There is the association. It's got a new name now, but it was the Southern Hemisphere Association of Fresh Fruit Exporters,
SHAFE.
SHAFE,
Yeah.
yeah.
where the other Southern Hemisphere countries are. But we've saw in all the meetings that South Africa is the country that's been the most representative. I think here and there you'd see one country only have apples represented on that
Okay.
SHAFE. Other one mainly only table grapes or whatever. It depends, I think, where the chairperson of that country's association is associated
Okay.
with. So from South Africa's side, where we do have then everybody, all the industries around
The widest
table.
range of fruits on
Yes,
the
yes.
representation.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
interesting.
if I just maybe can mention
Yes,
two
please.
things, Piet, that you
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah,
there
please.
before. Sometimes the FPEF goes into the disciplinary action route. There's also a mediation mechanism that it's not arbitration.
Yes.
Don't get involved in legal disputes, but mediation to try and prevent members and all the complainants to incur a lot of costs, go to a legal process. So retired, knowledgeable people who've been in the industry being used as mediators.
Wow.
So, and the FPEF carries the cost, pay that mediator for the first round. And the two parties are aware of that. Should they not reach an agreement, then further on they'll have to carry some costs. But in my 14 years, I've seen 80% of the cases they reach an agreement. Because right at the start it's being said to everybody, you must realize none of you going to walk out here 100% happy. But let's put everything on the table. And what happens quite often that I saw in the past is there's no marketing agreement, no contractual agreement. It's on a handshake, millions of rands of business. And when something goes pear-shaped, then people run to the FPEF with complaints. So what we did in the past, developed a marketing agreement template that we shared with the producer organization, said, please distribute it to your members, with the FPEF members, and reminders all the time, say, use this as a guideline to these things must be at least contained in there. So when you get to that stage, when there's a complaint, you can check. And Piet, they said sometimes my first question was, where's the agreement? And there's nothing on the table. And I said, okay, you can go into mediation, but let's see what comes out of that.
It's remarkable to think that people still do this without an agreement today.
Yeah. And I think why we say that there's always a reminder that because the FPEF membership grew from 88 members in 2012 to 170 now, as Piet said, 130 of them being exporters. So new people joining all the time. So when they join, they get that. But then people forget about it. Or in a company, maybe sits with the CEO or the MD, not being distributed to the marketing people, whatever. And that's an important mechanism, again, for the credibility of what the FPEF offers.
Now, if there's, in the term Fresh Produce Exporters Forum, there's nothing that associates that with South Africa, for instance. Can other countries, somebody from Australia or Chile or whoever, join FPEF? Have you had the request before?
Sorry, Piet, if I answer on your behalf, such a company must have a registered office with a physical address in South Africa.
Okay.
And they must be registered with the CIPC in South Africa as well. So it can't be just someone coming in, putting off a sort of fake office and then disappears again. So that's part of the process, the application process, to check, do the due diligence. Is that real company? Because once we had an application and checked everything, then it was a retail store in the main street of Beaufort West. Got nothing to do with fresh produce.
Yes.
So that's important. And I think, Louise, where you said, and Piet said, to retain and protect the image and the reputation of the FPEF, but also of the country.
For sure. And clearly you're doing a very good job of that.
Yeah.
Because I remember we interviewed Peter Dewald to us, and he said FPEF was established because we had to get rid of all the scallums because there were a lot of them around. And I remember that anybody with a laptop and a car and a handshake was suddenly an exporter. And then things went south a lot. There was a lot of turbulence, a lot of people lost a lot of money. So, and the fact that you are getting new membership and the membership is growing the way it is means that you're really doing something right. A lot of things right, it sounds like it.
So, Piet, what was the biggest eye-opener when you came in September for you that you weren't aware of, or that
I think the actual process of market access, how complicated it is and how long it takes. And often we criticize our government departments that they are slow, but it's often the counter government department who's actually slower. So that was quite a thing for me in terms of all the steps that you have to take, and that the duration or the length of time it actually takes to open up certain markets. And as I said before, then that's now only step one.
Yeah.
Then step two is, okay, can you actually service it economically? And that's where this whole thing about the South African Custom Union and how it's actually holding us back in terms of trade agreements. Compared to us, we're the largest exporter, but in the Southern Hemisphere, but we have the least or the worst trade agreements.
Yes.
If we have of all our competitors.
Yes.
So even when America slapped us with tariffs, then Chile only got 10%. We got 30%. And in the BRICS context, it doesn't really make sense because we are supposedly partners, but that's more of a political organization and economic. I think it's changing now. There's some movement.
I saw things with China.
So China and so on, but again, we kind of caught up. So when we speak to the officials, oftentimes their hands are a bit tied. And I also understand that, SACO is the one thing, so we have to keep the interests of the whole grouping. Must be alignment there. But then also when the DTIC goes and negotiates, then it's often not just fresh produce, fruit and veg that's affected. There's also meat products from agriculture, poultry. But then what about motor vehicles? What about textiles? What about all the other things? Because it's a give and take, So we fighting for access cheaper, but then India will say, but they want to send their textiles here. At a lower rate, which is also like 45%. And then we say, no, but we want to protect our textile industry. So there's a lot of negotiation and trade-offs, I think, that we are often not aware of. And even in the Fruit South Africa grouping, we also have an arrangement where, because government only handles, especially the counter governments, handle one application at a time, which is also frustrating.
You have to stand in a queue.
You have to stand in a queue, but what is that queue? How does that queue look? What's the priority access? So, and that's sometimes also a bit of a juggling act internally to say, okay, but hey, we're going there for apples and pears, but we also want to push the citrus in, or berries must come in, but there's a protocol and there's a priority listing that we can't, because you can't muddy the waters. Because some of the officials they're very stringent in terms of these are the steps. This is how we do it, and once we finish with that, then we start. So don't come pushing your agenda already on this side, because it just disturbs what's happening here. So that was for me quite a big learning that I didn't realize before.
And I think what very few people understand is that, as it is an effort for us to get these things organized, it is probably just as big as an effort on that side for them to align with all their things. And like we were involved in the market access live streaming during COVID, those people were probably sitting there just as nervous as our people on this side with what must be asked and what must be looked at and all that. So
and we see sometimes, some of the protocols are so stringent that it's an overkill. You can't then actually And that's why we lean strongly on our commodity organizations, technical people, to make sure, because you can get a protocol approved, but it's not viable for the fruit to actually do that. And it's overkill, literally, to stop some hoja or whatever, but it's not necessary to have it at -3 because it dies at 6 degrees or whatever. Then it's not there. Plus, we've actually, that's where the inspections from, like Anton has said, comes in from their side here to come and actually see how it's applied and how our value chain looks and the comfort that they can get. So it's very much an integrated approach, with the commodity organizations, the departments, people like the PPCP play a huge role in terms of the inspection side. And one of the things we're trying to do with them, for instance, and as industry, is to streamline some of those processes and the flow of information. Because in some cases, it's still you have to have a file. There's everything, and then there's one paper missing. I mean, it should all be electronic now. So it's things. Those are kind of things we're working towards. Some countries accept that, the electronic side. Others still want. Bring your docket, and we'll have a look.
I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, and that is that our trade agreements are somewhat hamstrung because of the South African SADC, Customs Union.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about that? I don't know who wants to go.
Well, it's the oldest custom union in the world. So it's between us and our neighboring countries, except Mozambique. So it's Lesotho, Swaziland, Zimbabwe, Botswana, and Namibia. So that's an arrangement that the government, that back in the day, I think when we were still colonies, I think that's.
So you've been in place since then?
Yeah, I think it's 100 and something years old. 12 years old. Yeah,
wow.
The customs union. So
Things have changed a little bit since then.
Yes. So it's an arrangement with, in terms of how the pot of customs that you collect is split on a formula between the different countries. Which is a very old way of doing things, but and if you look at it on paper, it just doesn't make sense for where we are, and we are by far, South Africa is the largest trading partner. But then for someone like Lesotho, that's like half of their national budget comes out of that allocation. So if you take it away, it will have socio-economic repercussions.
So is that money that South Africa gets and distributes to these countries?
Yeah. So all the customs that gets paid goes into a pot, basically, as far as I understand it, and then that gets distributed on a formula to the different countries. But it's not necessarily based on trade or whatever. It's like a fixed formula. So that's a big source of income for someone like Lesotho, as I mentioned, and Swaziland, or Eswatini. But now what happens is that because we're part of that custom union, we can't have a trade agreement with China, for instance, as South Africa. It must be done on a custom union level. And China says they won't they won't go into a trade agreement because Eswatini recognizes Taiwan as a nation. So you have all those other political complications where we just want to trade at and a good level. So I think someone like Davie Rood has got a lot of opinions on the whole matter. But as I said, you have to take the socio-economic and not just purely the numbers, but look at the effect if it goes away. But there must be a better way or something. And we often try to influence our departments to say, but especially DTIC, but just get a bit of backbone and make your neck stiff and just push things through.
My mouth is hanging open by what you've just told us.
I didn't know this.
No.
I wonder how many people know that. I've heard it mentioned, but not understood what it meant. Good heavens.
But then the irony is, there are rules how you engage with each other, but now willy-nilly, Namibia would close its border for South African tomatoes, whatever.
Yes.
Yes.
And we say, but isn't that contravention of the whole way and the whole purpose of SACU? So those things unfortunately also happen.
So not everyone's playing the game as they should be. Botswana does the same. They often close their borders for potatoes and onions when their own producers have.
So it only works in one direction.
Correct. So I think we had a bit of a disadvantage, but I must say there is a big process going on where the whole SACU arrangement is now being reevaluated.
Okay.
There's a lot of clever people, and I think in Treasury and in our larger apex organizations like AgBiz that are involved in that, where they get input from all the different industries. And again, it's not as simple as saying, we want it for fruit and veg, fresh. What about all the other products? What about all the other? I've mentioned textiles as an example, So Lesotho just says, but if China or India gets access at a lower rate, then it'll kill their textile industry, which is one of their key industries, that side, So those are the balance. That's a balancing act that that we often don't realize or see that also must happen at the back end. But from our point of view, we just want a fair chance, because if our products are of such a good quality that we can compete. So and we see that even people are prepared to pay a higher price to get the quality, but in some markets it can't work. So someone has to give. And it's typically back into the value chain where you have to give away some of your margin or take a lower price just to be competitive in that market. And with what's happening with America, a lot of our competing countries are also looking for other markets. So if you go to China, for instance, on the trade fair we went to, every country that you can think of is there, because it's such a huge market for everyone.
Yeah.
So it's not that, it's just us that want to get in there. Everyone else is also vying to get product in there. And traditionally, we're still very much exposed to Europe, for instance, on a lot of our commodities. So we have a gain, retain, and grow. Gain, retain, optimize. So there's a grow. The acronym is grow.
Okay, yes.
In the Fruit South Africa setup. So gain, retain, optimize our markets where we are. So, and that's now, we said before, that's step one. Now you have access. Now you want to be able to be competitive on a tariff or commercial basis. And then the third leg, which is very troublesome, is we must actually be able to get our product there. And that's kind of what's busy. So it's all working together. So and Anton has mentioned that our producers are producing more and more. They're getting better and better. So I often say that sometimes we're probably guilty of our own success, or what's the right expression?
Yes, you're a victim of your own success.
Victim of your own success, because the projections are just growth, but that fruit must go somewhere.
Or you can say it's a good problem to have, but it's still a problem.
Yeah. So the next question I want to ask you about, okay, so you have access, but then you've got these very, very punitive tariff payments, percentages that you have to pay. Is it possible, and is it happening at all, that one can negotiate a better deal for some of these places? For instance, I happen to know that South Africa is exporting quite a lot of fruit to India. And traditionally that we said, yes, it's available, you can go there, but they've got very high tariffs. You mentioned it earlier.
Yeah.
Is there hope to be able to bring those tariffs down a bit?
We must also just mention for the people that don't know is that we don't actually pay those tariffs. The country adds that, the receiving country, so their end consumer is probably going to be paying 15 or 20 or whatever.
Yeah, but there's also sometimes there's an offset, so you have to actually accept a lower price here. So
yes,
to be able to
keep it market
related. So someone takes the knock, and it's often the producer that has to take that effect. And I think that was what Trump tried in America to say, but he didn't realize that. So I see there's a study that came out, 90% of that cost was passed on to the end consumer.
Yes, and people didn't realize that.
They don't realize that, which is then causes inflation. But to answer you, Louise, I mean, for India specifically, I know there's a lot of negotiations going on. India and China are looking at free trade agreements with the African continent. And I think China is now closer to it the last time, and they actually excluded Eswatini from the list, which is very interesting. So there's ways of doing it and asking for special, dispensations or whatever, and we've seen that with America now. So we were under AGOA and we had tariff-free access for a number of products, but also only up to a certain level. AGOA has been renewed, but we also have the punitive tariffs from the Trump administration. But they came back and took a lot of the products off that list, it's because it was counter-seasonal and it was adding to the inflation.
So, like oranges is off, but the rest of citrus is still on, I
so
think.
that's a funny one. So oranges, but why not lemons or grapefruit or mandarins? Mandarins is our biggest growing
yes.
commodity or subsector. So it's oftentimes not logical really as to how it's applied, what the reasoning behind it is, and that's sometimes frustrating. So and it's and you can think for an exporter, marketer, you have to take all those things into consideration, and there's people that come up with a lot of clever plans sometimes as to how you can avoid some of that by having a base somewhere we add value and then it becomes localized there and then you pass it on, but it just complicates things. I think
I've got a theory about the whole Eswatini thing.
Okay.
You've mentioned it many times of how much fruit was exported in the old days
Yes.
as a product from Swaziland.
Yeah.
I think they're still looking at those boxes
Yeah.
that they said not anymore.
We should clarify that during the times where South African fruit was boycotted in Europe because of the apartheid regime, a lot of the stuff was exported and it was labelled export of Swaziland, which is now Eswatini.
Yeah.
And that was a while ago, and interesting that we're still talking about that.
Yeah.
Did you want something you looks like you want to add something?
Yeah, maybe the whole
Please
thing
do.
that Piet mentioned, all these challenges, things we need to address
Yes.
as an industry and government. So from an industry side, in the formalization of Food South Africa, then we realized there is a mechanism that's not been utilized within government, an acronym FIVCRT, Fruit Industry Value Chain Roundtable.
Okay.
We said, let's get this thing going, let's establish it, because it's co-chaired by the CEO of Fruit South Africa and at least the chief director level in the department. And all these things come on the table there. So these relevant departments around the table, where these things are being discussed, and again, looking for joint solutions so that you've got everybody's buy-in. But that is, I think, one mechanism to try and formalize all these things at one place.
Yeah, and it's also important to coordinate. So
Yes.
as I said, so we try and coordinate on a commodity organization, but to coordinate government departments is also difficult because the Department of Agriculture will have a separate mandate from the DTIC, for instance. And if it's not aligned, these guys are fighting for or trying to get access to markets which might not be important for us. We don't see a future there, but it might be a political motivation. We often see that with access into the continent for a lot of fruit, where we don't see it as a big market. The industry doesn't see it. There's a market, but it's not a huge market, and it's often a difficult market to exploit. And then DTIC will have their own KPIs, their officials in terms of who they engage with and what they, and then often it's not aligned. So the fruit industry value chain roundtables with their various working groups is actually a very nice mechanism. The frustration is then you often don't have participation in those things from the relevant departments. So at least the mechanism is there. So then we can escalate again, even to a ministerial level. And I think that's also one of the nice things about the way that South African agriculture especially is organized, is we can actually get access from either ourselves or other organizations that we are part of, umbrella organizations, to the highest level. So if we have an issue with agriculture related stuff, we can actually contact the minister's office and address that. Same with the transport Transnet things. We've engaged as industry is engaged directly with the minister. So there's ways of escalating it through the structures which a person acting on his own will never have that access, and that's one of the other benefits of membership, I suppose, is for the collective. And that's, for myself, coming out of organized agriculture, that was always the thing that I said, a farmer can influence everything up to his farm gate and maybe to town. Farmers Association can influence the town. Provincial organisation can influence the province, and then national is national. So, and we are actually structured like that, so that there's things feeding into each other, and there's also cross membership where, depending on your constituents, you might have different routes to get to the same end goal. So it's one of the big things that we do.
Okay. The one thing that so much has been said about, and we all know it's a huge headache, is the ports and the logistics and the infrastructure to the ports and at the ports and through the ports. I know we can spend an hour talking about this without solutions, but in a few well-chosen words, if it's at all possible, how are things looking? Is there light at the end of the tunnel? Is there opportunity? What can you tell us?
Yeah, I've picked my words carefully. So our position is not to really go to the media on the issues. We're really working hard behind the scenes,
yes,
with the relevant stakeholders and staff and management at the ports. But it has been a frustrating season, to say the least. I mean, it's well known that there has been delays. A lot of it caused by the weather. So we've had extreme wind conditions. But unfortunately, that just showed up some of the efficiencies that still exist in the port. So even though there's been a huge expansion in terms of getting new capital equipment into the system, my second day, something Anton has been fighting for, I got right like that, was new rubber tire gantries cranes working in the port, which was launched then or commissioned then. And everyone was very hopeful that that new equipment would really sort out some of the inefficiencies. And then we had those, it's the worst wind. That's definitely in 5 years, probably 10 years in terms of wind delays, where it's just dangerous. You can't operate in those high winds and gusts in the port. But then the recovery has been slow, so there was a lot of delays there. There was a lot of technical failures, equipment failures still, because you have new machines and old machines. Then we had, there was failures in terms of infrastructure where the systems would be down. The power was out the other day. So we have all these operational type of failures that are actually causing huge potential losses and actual losses for the industry, because we had to divert as industry quite a lot of product to other ports. So from Walvis Bay, the Eastern Cape and even Durban had deciduous fruit going there, which is a huge additional cost for the exporters, and someone has to pay at the end of the day for that. So it's either the exporter or the producer. Again, it comes, it just reduces the margin.
It will filter down.
Yeah, plus then fruit was, especially your highly perishable things like stone fruit, the shelf life is limited. So if you lose a couple of days in the value chain or in the supply chain, you actually, at risk of having. So I think if you modeled it, and I played with a lot of models in my days, if you would model this would almost be like a black swan type of events. So extreme it was. Sure. It was the level of everything that kind of went wrong, could go wrong. Plus now we have a weaker dollar.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a stronger rand, but now now you're sitting with, you had to spend more money to get your fruit there because you had to divert. It took longer, so you're sitting with older fruit at a potentially lower quality. You have quality issues in the market. You also, if you miss a window, so our fruit is marketed mainly through programs with retailers. So if you miss a window, there must have been 5 containers. You can't send 10 containers next week.
Yeah, then the price is down.
And the price, so you're sitting with older fruit that comes there, poorer quality, lower price, plus a poor exchange rate from our perspective. It's a double whammy, so everything that kind of could go wrong, did go wrong this year. And it's not necessarily just, the ports that are to blame. That's, the whole system couldn't adjust quickly enough. So, okay, well, there is a wind delay. What do we do? And I think it just showed up some of the inefficiencies. So again, as FPEF, we are engaging with the Transnet Port Authority, Transnet Port Terminals, the port authorities, even ministerial levels, and we've engaged now with international consulting group that we actually want to get in and see, to evaluate what are some of those efficiencies and what are some of the quick wins that can be done. And it could be just by improving your planning capacity, how they allocate time slots at the gates. There's such a lot of small incremental changes that you can just make here and there in the system, which can then potentially lead to a 5 or 10% improvement. And that is enough to kind of cover those extra costs and just get product through. Hopefully the wind will subside, but as we always say, hope is not a strategy.
No. Yeah.
So
good luck with that.
And neither is luck.
Good luck with that. It's a massive thing because, as you say, there's all this fruit that's being planted. It's got to get on a ship, and it's got to get on a ship timeously. And we've heard for 10 years people have been complaining about the issues in the port. And I know that you guys are working at it non-stop, but you're dealing with government. It's not like dealing with the business.
If I can mention something there, I think on the positive side, when the new CEO of the Transnet Group came into her position, Michelle Phillips, she really started to change the culture within Transnet. And she was and is willing to work with the private sector to accept assistance. That was not the case previously. And what we did just when she got appointed in the position, and it was the late Minister Pravin Gordhan, we took them that day on a tour. Started at a farm in Franschhoek, went to the pack house, went to a cold store next to the N7, went to the port for them to understand the entire value chain, and then said, oh, now they understand why it is such an issue. And I think, yes, there are still a lot of things that need to be done. But I think just the backing on that level of the CEO,
That's good to know. We've heard about her and all the amazing stuff she's doing. Sorry, Dewald.
Something I also think is there's a little bit of a gap is for growers and producers to understand that value chain. They know about it, but it's like, why do I need a refrigerated container, for instance, or what do these people do in terms of to better that? I think if we can get them more understanding also, because the grower is stuck with his nose in the tree. He must get his fruit to size, and then he just expects. But if there's could be small things that they could do on their side that could prolong or better that.
So one of the things we're working on quite hard as an industry is that is the information that flows through, so that everyone can plan better. So and it's two-way traffic, because the port needs to know what's coming, plan for that, but the growers also need to know, okay, you can't send now.
Yeah.
This is what's the situation there. So we
or
really
at least make a plan earlier.
Or at least make a plan earlier, which is difficult. I mean, some guys are just not. The Port of Cape Town is such an important exit point and entry point, actually, because if we have the same issues in getting product out, people bringing product in sitting with exactly the same issue. So we're really working hard in terms of how do we improve that communication. So we have a full-time person that basically that's all she does, almost, is try to manage the information on both sides so that we can preempt it, but it's difficult. I mean, the wind, we've even engaged with a CSIR who's doing a wind study in the Port of Cape Town, because if you look at wind readings around the port, it doesn't
Yes.
support what will show what's actually happening in the board. But it's just the way that the wind comes around the mountain and down there. I mean, it's actually dangerous circumstances. If the wind's blowing 100 kilometers an hour, you don't want to be climbing up a 4-story crane to go and move, boxes around that, in that condition. So we understand that, and we're not, we just want to see it working as efficient as it can, and that takes a lot of different, moving parts to make sure that we get the product through and get it to the market at the end of the day.
Exciting.
Maybe coming to your remark, about the entire value chain. One of the other mandates of the FPEF is transformation, to develop exporters, emerging exporters. So the transformation manager, throughout the years, we put together training manuals, and the very basic one explains this entire value chain, everybody's role. So initially, when we started, we thought it would be only targeted at emerging exporters. But then, as things progressed, we realized that it's also being used in the induction process,
Yes.
in the FPEF members when they appoint new staff, and it is available on the website of the FPEF for everybody to access, the producers, everybody to see and understand the whole process.
That's good to know.
That's very good to know.
Yeah, and that the whole manual has been rewritten last year, so it's now called Harvest to Home. So it's a very comprehensive manual that's available for free, and we also offer training courses actually on it. So it's
Fantastic. I want to ask you, what are your plans for the future? Because you definitely don't look like somebody who's going to sit still.
Yeah, thank you. I think I'm fortunate. I think that I'm still healthy. I think that my brain is still here with me. And I think I've got something still to offer the industry. I'm very grateful for what I've learned, for the opportunities I had, all the international travels, being engaged with all the experiences. So I think I'm still able to offer something. Either be it on a consultancy basis, serve on some boards. And just recently, I've been appointed as well again to the board of the PPECB.
Wow,
this
that's
time as
exciting.
the ministerial representative.
Okay.
My previous stints there were as the industry representative.
Okay.
So that will be interesting. And then also assist the Western Cape government with some of the projects here initially. But I've got myself a business coach. Towards the end of last year, I realized I need somebody to guide me here.
Okay.
And then she said, you must position yourself on a global level.
Well, that's exciting.
So that's exciting for me.
Yes.
Looking forward to it. And so currently my wife said we need to schedule at least one day in a week that we can take advantage of the pensioners' discounts everywhere.
Love it. But Anton, thank you so much for what you have done for the Fresh Produce Exporters Forum and for the broader South African fresh produce exporters sector. I think I don't know if people know the many hours on planes and the many hours in foreign countries in hotel rooms and the late night talking to people and smiling and having drinks when you actually probably would like to be sleeping already. So thank you very much for doing all of that on behalf of the South African Exporters Forum people and members. And we wish you the very best of luck going forward, and we'll be watching this space.
Thank you very much again, Louise. Dewald, thanks for the opportunity.
Yes.
It's really nice to share this. And I said the end of the season, we work with seasons in this industry. So, and as I've said at the beginning, I'm really 100% at ease handing over to Piet.
Fantastic.
As you've heard already, the strides he made.
And Piet, thank you very much, Anton. And Piet,
We still got our 2 questions. that we
yes,
must ask
tell
them.
us, have you got a message for anybody that's listening, anybody that's involved in the fresh produce sector about FPEF and maybe the future?
I think what I'm grateful for is the handover process that we had with Anton, and it gave me a good backing. They're coming from outside, kind of. They put a lot of trust in me. So I think what we want to do is, now I've alluded to that earlier, is we want to continue giving good service to our members in the different focus areas that we have, in terms of market access, logistics, information, and transformation. So, and marketing, the trade shows and those type of things, which is tangible benefits that we can get to our members. So for me, a lot of the focus now is a bit to streamline some of the old processes and ways of doing things. So nothing about the old guy has his ways, I have my ways. So we're looking at, just how to bring in efficiency. We're a small organization. We have a fairly flat structure, so it's always, but we have a lot of experience in the team, so that's nice. So my mission now is just to streamline that, do things quicker, better, and then see again how much, what other value we can extract towards our members. So as long as our members are happy and they see the value that we do, we're doing a good job. And I'm excited about the future of the industry and where it's going. As I said, our quality is exceptional in the world market, so we can compete. There's no, it's just to make, the mechanisms of how we compete. That's a bit worrying, So I often think of, okay, well, there's all this, and it's not just the fruit sector. There's other sectors that are also growing in agriculture. How do we get it to those markets is often the thing, and can it still be competitive in pricing there? So, so my message is, we as an organization, we're a service organization for our members, and that's what we're trying to continue with, the legacy that Anton has left, because he really gave the organization a lot of structure and purpose, and how to build on that. So I'm not going to just change things for the sake of changing it. We really want to, if we make changes, to improve it, and that's where we are now. And the team is I think we've got the backing of the team. As I said, very experienced team. They're all they have a lot of expertise in terms of the departments that they are working in, and hopefully we can be of service to not just our members but the broader industry as well.
Wow.
Fantastic, and good luck with that. So we are nearly done. We are wrapping, but we have a tradition, and that
Two
is,
random questions. Unfortunately, there's one for each of you.
it's just fun.
And
From somebody previously that's left us with a question.
I'll tell you now why I chose them for you. Is, Anton, you've met probably thousands of people in your life. Okay. If you can invite 3 people to dinner, who would it be?
My one good friend from Russia, Mikhail Fatiev.
Yes, I've heard of him before.
He's passionate about South Africa. He's passionate about Afrikaans. He
Okay.
composed a song, Die Lied van Jong Suid-Afrika, but not the one that we sang previously years ago. And he recorded that in Stellenbosch.
Okay.
But in the Russian pop genre.
Okay.
So, and Mikhail is a very interesting person, very philosophic, and I always enjoy him. So Mikhail is from the industry side, really a nice person, and I love Russia with the people there. And then if I look at some of the other people also within South Africa, I would like to sit down with and have a nice lunch or a dinner, would be someone like a Christowiese, and learn from him. I think from his humble beginnings and what he built and achieved. And then lastly would be hulle. Because people always say, hulle sê, hulle sê, they say that. I want to sit down
You must be careful. There's people that identify as they now.
Yeah, I want to sit down with hulle.
Okay.
Interesting.
What an incredible answer. And there you
Wow.
go.
And Piet, for you, and you new year, if you could be president for one day, what would you change?
How long time?
Yeah.
That's a difficult one, It's I think, I don't know.
Just shoot
Be
from
honest.
the hip. What comes to mind first?
First thing.
I think I'd change the whole thing around, I must be careful now. I think some of our ideologies are just outdated. So I'd really push the free market, and also the Al-Qaeda deployment and some of the BEE regulations. I think it's very constricting to everything. So I think that the centralized control that government has, and then changing that into more of a free market initiative, and things like where we are with some of the services that we see that we're dependent on, we can really see that, and then just go back to kind of a merit-based HR policy, if you want to call it that. So I think that's some of the things that we see that's so inefficient. Government should provide the what's the omgewing in Engels? The environment, so that private business can thrive.
Yes.
So I'm very much pro private sector involvement and private sector growth, and that's where we're going to see job opportunities being created and moving the whole country forward. I mean, we've got such untapped potential in our whole country that if I could change that, then that would be where we do that.
Very, very well said. I think that was a very astute answer for such a broad question. Anton and Piet, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing about FPEF, who they are, what they do, what they've done, and what they're planning to do in the future. Thank you so much.
We appreciate it. We appreciate your time, in your off time, if you have some, and in your newly busy schedule. So thank you for that.
And good luck.
No, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. It was nice chatting to you. So.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.